$40 billion stolen from Americans.
Trump tariff time bomb explodes now.
Your holiday just got $132 more expensive.
Prices explode. Inflation returns.
Breaking tonight, a $40 billion tariff shock is sweeping through America's holiday economy. Electronics, clothing, and toys are suddenly costlier, and economists warn inflation is creeping back. It's not a law, not a bill, but every American will pay it. Trump's new tariffs are quietly turning your holiday shopping list into a $40 billion tax trap. Electronics, toys, clothes, all more expensive. And it's not China paying the price, it's you. Let's unpack how a policy meant to protect America has become a price bomb beneath its own economy. Every December, the same story plays out. Families hunt for deals, retailers race for profit, and the nation's economy leans on holiday sales to close the year in the green. But this year, something different lurks behind those sparkling aisles. A $40 billion tariff wave, a hidden holiday tax that no one voted for, but everyone will feel. According to the Economic Times, Trump's new trade orders, a revival of his earlier America First strategy, slapped fresh duties on Chinese electronics, European textiles, and Latin American consumer goods. In practice, that means millions of products now cost between 5 and 25% more before they even reach the store shelf. It adds up fast. Electronics imports, approximately $120 billion from China times 10% tariff equals $12 billion added cost. Clothing and footwear, approximately $90 billion times 10% equals $9 billion extra. Toys, candies, and decor, tariffs 5 to 25% rise to approximately $6 billion. Add freight, warehousing, and retail markup, and the national tab touches $40 billion.
For the average American, that's $132 each. For a family of 4, more than $500 quietly erased from holiday budgets. Tariffs sound like foreign policy, but they work like sales tax, just hidden. Importers pay the customs fee and immediately raise prices to protect margins. Retailers follow suit. The result, a government-mandated price increase that never shows up on a receipt. Economist Wendy Edelberg at Brookings calls it the illusion of patriotism with the cost of inflation. The politics say America wins. The math says America pays. Let's trace the logic. The White House argues that tariffs punish China for dumping cheap goods and protect U.S. manufacturing. But the United States imports about $550 billion in Chinese products each year. Tax that stream and you're not hurting factories in Guangdong, you're raising the cost of every laptop, phone, and TV in Cleveland. Past evidence is clear. The Peterson Institute found that the 2018 to 2020 trade war increased consumer costs by roughly $1,300 per household, while cutting U.S. manufacturing output by 1.6%. This round, analysts estimate another 2 to 3% price uptick in everyday consumer goods by January. Inflation, which had eased to 3%, is expected to re-accelerate towards 3.5 to 3.7%. Bank of America models show tariffs could add 0.4 percentage points to headline CPI. That tiny number equals $110 billion in new nationwide spending pressure. And what follows inflation? Interest rates. If the Federal Reserve responds by tightening again, mortgage rates could hover above 8%, credit card APR above 23%, and auto loan payments hit a 40-year high. A tariff at the dock becomes a tax on borrowing in the living room.
Supporters counter that tariffs create jobs at home. A few steel plants did reopen after 2018, but each steel job saved cost roughly $900,000 in added consumer costs. Downstream industries, auto parts, construction, appliances, shed more workers than steel gained. Mary Lovely summarizes it bluntly. It's a double tax, once on consumers, once on jobs. People buy less because everything costs more. Companies hire less because demand shrinks. Meanwhile, retailers face their own crunch. The National Retail Federation warns holiday sales growth could slow to 1%. Target and Best Buy told investors they expect margins under pressure. Walmart's CFO called the new tariffs a pricing event we did not budget for. Even giants like Amazon face inventory reshuffles, redirecting shipments from tariffed ports to Mexico or Canada to save costs. But consumers can't reroute their wallets. Their holiday lists stay the same, only the totals change. Credit card balances have already hit $1.3 trillion, a record. Nearly 45% of cardholders now carry debt month to month. Add tariff-driven price rises, and many households cross from budget strain to financial distress. There's also a psychological dimension. When leaders say we're winning the trade war, people expect cheaper domestic goods. When they see the opposite, higher prices, trust erodes. Political victory turns into personal betrayal. That feeling fuels panic spending and resentment at once. Economists call it inflation expectation feedback. Once people believe prices will rise, they buy faster, driving prices higher still. The cycle feeds itself until confidence breaks. And confidence is fragile. Consumer sentiment tracked by the University of Michigan fell 8 points in October, its sharpest drop since early 2022. That means millions are already bracing for pain before it fully arrives.
So how did we get here again? Because tariffs work politically even when they fail economically. They sound simple, tax the foreigners, but in a globalized supply chain, foreign is part of every American product. The average smartphone assembled in China contains US chips, Japanese screens, and Korean batteries. Tariff that assembly and you tax the entire ecosystem. Each component is priced in dollars, so the tariff boomerangs home. The result? A false victory that looks patriotic on paper but behaves like inflation in practice. Or, as one retail analyst put it, every tariff speech ends with a more expensive TV. Next, when this $40 billion price shock collides with a fragile supply chain and holiday panic buying, the pressure could ignite a second inflation wave and reshape global trade again. The first wave of tariffs hit like a headline, the second spreads like a shadow. Because tariffs don't just change prices, they change behavior. Retailers rush to stock up before the next duty increase. Importers reroute through third countries. Consumers panic buy before price hikes hit shelves. Freight rates from Asia to the West Coast have jumped more than 40% since September. Container leasing firms call it a mini 2021. Ports in Los Angeles and Long Beach report surging warehouse congestion as retailers pull forward inventories. This behavior isn't irrational, it's survival. When policy turns unpredictable, everyone tries to beat the system. But moving faster costs more. Shipping insurance premiums rose 18%, warehousing fees doubled. Every layer of logistics adds friction, and friction adds inflation. So even goods not under tariff feel the heat because they share the same transport bottlenecks.
Moody's Analytics estimates that by January, the cumulative effect of freight plus tariffs plus insurance will raise the landed price of imported consumer goods by roughly 8%. That's enough to erase half of the inflation progress made this year. Retail giants are already sounding alarms. Walmart says it's facing margin compression through Q4. Best Buy cut its full-year profit outlook. Target froze new hires. Even Mondelez International, the snack titan behind Oreo and Cadbury, reported falling volumes after price hikes, admitting that consumer fatigue is real. Smaller businesses have it worse. Toy Wholesalers of America warns that tariffs could wipe out 1/5 of small shop profit margins this season. And when small retailers go under, local communities lose far more than storefronts. They lose jobs, sponsorships, and a sense of stability. Beyond US borders, the shockwaves are strategic. China has redirected part of its export flow toward Europe and Southeast Asia, softening the impact. The European Union, meanwhile, is weighing countermeasures against US products if European luxury and auto sectors get caught in the tariff crossfire. Translation: another trade war is quietly warming up. In Canada, policymakers fear collateral damage. Canadian aluminum exporters, critical to US construction, face new scrutiny under origin of goods checks. In Mexico, assembly plants benefit as US firms reroute production south to dodge duties. Economists call it nearshoring with political side effects. Each region adjusts, but one truth stays constant. Tariffs are never isolated. They redraw the map of global commerce, one regulation at a time. When ordinary shoppers hear prices rising, two instincts clash: fear and urgency. Together, they form panic demand.
Online search data backs it up. Google Trends shows a 20% surge in buy before price goes up. That's how inflation expectations turn into reality. Consumers spend faster, shelves empty quicker, wholesalers raise prices to restock, and the cycle repeats. Economists at JP Morgan call it expectation contagion. The perception of scarcity becomes the engine of inflation, and perception spreads faster than policy can contain it. If inflation spikes again, the Federal Reserve faces an impossible choice: raise rates and risk a recession, or hold steady and watch prices climb. A 0.4% increase in headline inflation might sound minor, but on a $28 trillion economy, it equals more than $110 billion in extra costs. That's why markets are already pricing in another quarter-point hike by February. Higher interest rates mean costlier credit cards, slower housing, weaker small business loans. The ripple hits every layer of daily life. What began as tariffs on Chinese goods ends as a squeeze on American credit. There are winners. Some domestic manufacturers see brief boosts. A few Midwest steel mills hire again. But the broader data tell a sobering story. Since 2018, manufacturing employment is down 36,000 positions overall, despite tariff protection. Meanwhile, corporate profits shift overseas. Chinese producers move final assembly to Vietnam or Mexico, slipping under tariff thresholds while keeping control of supply chains. In effect, the US pays more for the same goods with new labels. Economist Chad Brown calls it the world's most expensive paperwork.
So why persist? Because tariffs sound like power. They frame global competition as a fight with clear sides, us versus them. But the battlefield is global value chains, and every bullet ricochets home. Politically, the $40 billion cost is diffuse. No single voter gets a tariff bill in the mail. They just see groceries inching higher, rent checks tighter, savings thinner. It's invisible pain, and that makes it powerful. History offers a warning. In 1930, the Smoot-Hawley tariffs triggered retaliations that deepened the Great Depression. In 2019, the first Trump-China tariff war shaved 0.3% off U.S. GDP, about $70 billion lost output. Now, with a fragile post-pandemic economy, repeating that experiment could be far costlier. Picture an ordinary family in Ohio. They saved $800 for Christmas shopping. Last year, that bought a laptop, winter coats, and toys for the kids. This year, after tariffs, the same list costs $940. They'll cut one gift, delay a bill, or carry the balance on a 23% APR credit card. That is how macro policy becomes micro pain. Multiply that by 120 million households, and you see why a $40 billion policy shock matters. Yes, but it demands honesty instead of slogans. Tariffs can't rebuild industries hollowed out by automation and technology. They can only buy time and very expensively. Real protection lies in innovation, education, and domestic infrastructure that makes U.S. production competitive again. Some economists propose replacing tariffs with targeted subsidies for critical sectors, chips, batteries, renewable energy, while negotiating fair trade pacts to reopen markets abroad. That approach rewards creation, not punishment.
Trade should feel like cooperation, not combat, because every trade war eventually runs out of enemies and starts consuming allies. As this holiday season unfolds, millions of Americans will face checkout totals they can't explain. They'll blame greed, shortages, or global chaos, but beneath it all sits a policy choice, a $40 billion time bomb ticking quietly through every transaction. The hidden holiday tax isn't printed on a receipt. It hides in the margins of every item scanned. It's the unseen cost of political theater, where power looks strong until the bill arrives at home. Trade wars always promise independence, yet in practice they teach interdependence the hard way. Because in a world this connected, no one wins by making everyone else poorer. The next time a leader says they'll pay the price, remember, someone always does, and most often it's you. That is the true cost of the $40 billion tariff time bomb.